Welcome back to Product X, where we decode the next big thing in tech before it goes mainstream. I'm Rena. Today we're diving into a story that's already shaking up Silicon Valley Recursive Superintelligence, or RSI. They just burst out of stealth mode with a $6.5 billion funding round. And get this, both NVIDIA and AMD co-invested. Yes, the two biggest chip rivals on the planet, investing in the same AI startup. That's basically unheard of. So, let me bring in our two experts. Vivian, you've been deep in the Silicon Valley investment scene for over a decade. Mind giving us a quick intro?
Hi everyone, I'm Vivian Liu, Senior Angel Investor at Pre-Angel Fund, and I've been backing AI and frontier tech founders in the Valley for about 12 years now.
And Nolan, you're joining us as our technical voice today.
Hey, Rena Vivian. I'm Nolan, formerly a top architect at a major tech company. I've spent years building large-scale distributed systems and thinking about AI infrastructure, so this RSI topic is right up my alley.
Awesome. All right, here's the big question. A company with fewer than 30 people, barely out of stealth, and they're already valued at $4.65 billion. What on earth is going on? Vivian, let's start with you.
Yeah, honestly, when I first saw the term sheet, my first thought was, okay, who's behind this? Because the valuation alone tells you the investors aren't just betting on an idea, they're betting on people. And RSI's roster is basically the AI equivalent of an all-star team. You've got Tianyuan Dong, who ran Meta's Fair and built that famous ELF OpenGo project. And then there's Richard Sauscher, former CEO of U.com and Andrew Ng's student, plus a bunch of people from OpenAI, DeepMind, Google Brain. I hate the term dream team, but this really is one.
Right. And if you look at what they've actually done, it's not just a bunch of famous names thrown together. The real differentiator is their technical vision. They're not building another ChatGPT competitor, you know? What they're proposing is fundamentally different from current LLMs, even the most advanced ones. Let me break that down a bit.
Please do, because I've been hearing this term recursive self-improvement everywhere, but I'm not sure most people actually understand what it means technically.
Okay, think about it this way. Today's AI, even GPT-4, it's impressive, but it's fundamentally reactive. You give it a prompt, it generates an output. It's like a super knowledgeable Borshishung. Yeah, it knows a ton, but it's not creating new knowledge. What RSI is trying to build is something that can design its own experiments, identify its own blind spots, and actually modify its own codebase. That's a completely different architectural paradigm. It's the difference between a student who memorizes textbooks and a scientist who runs experiments.
And that's exactly why NVIDIA and AMD both came in. I mean, think about it from their perspective. If RSI pulls this off, the compute demand doesn't just grow linearly, it explodes exponentially. Because if AI can do AI research autonomously, you're looking at a feedback loop of improvement that consumes compute at a rate we've never seen before. Both companies are essentially placing a bet on future infrastructure needs.
That makes a lot of sense. But here's what I'm wondering. There's been a lot of hype around AI doing science before. What makes RSI's approach different from, say, what DeepMind has been doing with AlphaFold or their other science projects?
That's a great question, and honestly, the distinction matters. What DeepMind did with AlphaFold was remarkable, but it was still a supervised learning problem. You give it protein sequences, it predicts structures. RSI is going further. They're talking about AI that can set its own research goals, design novel experiments, and iterate on its own architectures without human-in-the-loop intervention. That's a whole different beast in terms of safety and engineering complexity.
Yeah. And from the investment side, I'd add that the market opportunity they painted is massive. They're not just targeting one vertical. Their pitch essentially is, build this engine, And you can point it at drug discovery, new battery materials, even nuclear fusion research. The TAM, if they succeed, is essentially every R&D intensive industry on the planet. That's why the valuation is what it is. Investors are pricing in a potential platform shift, not just a single product.
Okay, so let's talk about the risks here. Because this sounds almost too ambitious. Nolan, from a technical standpoint, what could go wrong?
Oh, where do I start? The biggest challenge is what I'd call the alignment problem at scale. If your system is modifying its own code, how do you ensure it doesn't drift into a state that's unsafe or produces garbage? There's also the engineering reality. Building a system that can reliably design, execute, and evaluate experiments without human oversight is incredibly hard. We've seen how brittle even the most advanced AI systems can be when you shift them out of their training distribution. RSI is essentially asking for a system that can operate in an open-ended way, and that's uncharted territory.
And on the business side, the risk is simpler, but just as real. Can they actually deliver on the milestones? Early-stage AI companies, especially those with such ambitious R&D timelines, often face a valley of death where they need to show meaningful progress to justify the next round. The compute costs alone are staggering. So it's not just a tech problem. It's a fundraising and execution problem over multiple years.
That's a really balanced view. Let's shift gears a bit. One thing that struck me in the coverage was that RSI is explicitly avoiding the consumer chatbot space. They're going after automated scientific discovery as their first target. Is that a smart positioning? Or is it just too niche?
I think it's brilliant, honestly. The consumer LLM space is a bloodbath right now. You've got OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Meta. Everyone and their mother is building chatbots. For a startup with 30 people to compete in that space, it's basically suicide. By positioning themselves as an infrastructure layer for scientific research, they sidestep the consumer wars and go after something with enormous value but far less competition. It's a classic pick your battlefield strategy.
And technically, it makes sense too. Scientific research has clear metrics for success. Did you discover something new? Did you improve a process? Can you replicate results? That's actually easier to define reward functions for than general-purpose intelligence. It's a smarter starting point than trying to build a general assistant from scratch.
I love that angle. All right, last big question before we wrap this section. Let's say RSI does pull this off. They build a system that can meaningfully accelerate scientific discovery. What's the end game? Are we talking about a tools company? Or are they positioning themselves to become the next pharmaceutical or energy giant?
That's the billion-dollar question. My read is they're positioning themselves to be the engine that powers discovery across multiple industries. They might not become Pfizer or Exxon, but they could become the company that every pharmaceutical company and research institution has to license technology from. That's an extraordinarily valuable position if they execute. But the path there is going to be rocky, and there will be a lot of naysayers along the way.
And technically, I just say, let's see them get to proof of concept first. Right now, this is still a very compelling hypothesis. The real test will be when they actually publish results from their system. That's when the rubber meets the road.
Fair enough. Okay, let's do a quick lightning round. Rapid-fire questions, short answers. Vivian, you're up first. If RSI succeeds, which industry gets disrupted first? A. Pharma, energy, or materials science?
Probably materials science, honestly. Shorter feedback loops, easier to run experiments, and there's massive demand for new battery materials right now.
I'd say materials too, but I'd add that drug discovery is probably the most valuable market if they crack it.
Second question. What's the one thing about RSI's tech that excites you the most?
The ambition, the idea that you could have an AI that doesn't just answer questions, but actually generates new knowledge. That's the holy grail.
For me, it's the self-modifying architecture. That's a problem I've thought about for years, and seeing someone actually try to build it at scale is thrilling.
Third biggest red flag about this company?
The timeline. They're promising something that could take a decade, and in venture capital, that's an eternity. Funding fatigue is real.
The safety question. Nobody's fully solved how to keep a self-modifying AI aligned, and RSI is essentially making that problem central to their architecture.
Fourth, if you could have dinner with anyone from the RSI founding team, who would it be?
Richard Soker. He's built a company before. He knows the AI space deeply, and I'd want to hear his vision for the business model.
Tian Yuandong. His work on ELF OpenGo was legendary, and I'd be curious how his thinking has evolved toward this new goal.
Last one. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that RSI achieves its stated mission within the next decade?
I'd say a 6. Interesting approach, but a lot has to go right.
I'll go with a 5. The technical hurdles are enormous, but if anyone can make progress on this, it's this team.
Okay, time for closing thoughts. Vivian, can you summarize today's conversation in one sentence?
RSI is a high-risk, high-reward bet on a team and a vision that could fundamentally change how we do science, if they can navigate the massive technical and business challenges ahead.
Nolan, your turn.
The concept of recursive self-improvement is technically fascinating and potentially transformative, but we're still in the very early innings of figuring out whether it's even achievable at scale.
Perfect. Well, that's all the time we have today, folks. Thanks to Vivian and Nolan for breaking down RSI's $4.65 billion story with such depth. If you want to stay ahead of the next big thing in tech, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. I'm Rena, and I'll see you tomorrow.